Hello, friends. So this video is the book Unnecessary Chaos, and this is part 2. And we're going to start with chapter 2, and this chapter is called Sexuality. And you will find the reference to it in the video, the vision, at the timestamp 10 minutes and 44 seconds. So this is how I'm going to do it with all of the videos and how they pertain to that original video, the vision. So you'll be able to cross-reference them. So let's get started. Chapter 2, Sexuality. I'm a believer of the philosophy of coming out of the gates with guns blazing. So I figured this would be a great chapter to begin with. Let's get right to it. Now, I just want to give an update on this. 5 years ago when I wrote this book, that was my philosophy. It has changed since then. I think I'm a little bit more mellow than I was then. A little bit more balanced, let's say. So, all right. For centuries, we as a society, we as a human species, have been shamed into repressing our emotions and instinctual desires. We have been taught that our emotions and desires are to be feared and should be hidden, and therefore creating a shadow aspect of our true essence, our true eternal being. We have been taught that sexuality is a physical exchange of the human bodies through desire, lust, obligation, or perhaps love, for the motivation of procreation or to achieve a form of intimacy. We've been taught that sexuality is to be considered a taboo subject or dirty, or something that should be concealed and not talked about, especially in certain religious circles and in the confines of certain religious beliefs. Even without any religion at all, sexuality and the conversation of it is viewed to be inappropriate or politically incorrect in some families, circles, and societies. However, we've also been taught to use it as leverage for commitment, leverage for power, leverage for financial gain, and leverage for whatever else we could possibly imagine. We've been taught that sex is a weapon, as well as a vice, and a device for and of humans. We've been taught lies. And although we have made some progress in the realm of sexuality from where it used to be a few generations ago, we are still very far from the truth, especially in some cultures that still retain quite an archaic and barbaric view of sexuality and its purposes that result in it causing severe psychological, physical, and emotional damage to its people and victims. The truth is, sexuality is an exchange of sacred creative energy, be it mentally, physically, or spiritually. But very few people know that or even remotely understand it. And because of this, there is a lot of distorted energy being exchanged between individuals that is not even consciously realized. A society that keeps knowledge that will set you free, bound and hidden in plain sight for monetary gain, is a society that will eventually decay and crumble. It's more monetarily advantageous for a decrepit society to keep individuals sick and diseased and ignorant. Sick, diseased, and ignorant people create money avenues for the greedy, and they do everything in their power to create a repetitive cycle generation after generation after generation. Then we wonder why we have such high rates of depression, anxiety, addictions, divorces, and suicides. This, however, is not to say that you are not responsible for your own energy or your own life, because you most certainly are. One person being unconsciously aware and another person being unconsciously aware, and then exchanging distorted energy between them, is a recipe for disaster at some point, in any of its various forms. But how can one be held responsible for something they are unaware of? It's the culpable mental state of law that applies here. One must be aware of what they are doing before they can be held accountable for it. Therefore, if a society represses, withholds, and dismisses knowledge that will free its people, where does the culpability truly lie? It may be beginning to make very good sense to you as to why we are currently in a rapid state of ascension, and why outdated hierarchies, outdated belief systems, and outdated mindsets of those who hold on to greed are progressively crumbling right before our very eyes. Ascension may actually be making sense to many now, if it hasn't already. Moving on to the properties of energy. The fact is that energy does not fade away or simply disappear or dissolve. It can only transfer from one object of matter to another. Humans as an example in relation to this context. Or it transmutes, form, alchemy, period. When we are in the vicinity of another person or many people, we are subject to the energy that they carry within themselves. If we are unaware of this fact, then we leave ourselves completely open to their energy projections, imprints, radiating out and into our own energetic fields. This happens every day, continuously, whether you are conscious of it or not. Here's a fun fact. You don't even have to be in the vicinity of anyone to absorb energy from another or many others. Thought forms are energy. So it would not be very difficult for someone's negative thought forms about you or directed toward you to actually affect you and your energetic field. This is if you are unconscious or unaware of how energy exchange can literally affect you mentally, physically, and spiritually. In fact, let's go on an imaginary stroll through the online dating world for a moment to illustrate this even further. Can you imagine how successful dating sites would be if people were required to list the energy they carry within and around them instead of their hobbies, educational and professional backgrounds, partner preferences, and selfies? And let's not forget those sites where it's basically 1-800-SCHEDULE-A-SCREW. You know what I'm talking about. The readily available, quick and easy, no investment emotionally or even financially for that matter, hookup sites. One person just connects with the other person, they accept, they exchange a couple nude pics. Of course, you have to approve the physical physique and goods. If everything looks desirable, set a date and time, and they are good to grind. How much simpler can it get than that? Talk about an easy target. But remember, we have existed in a society that has preferred to keep us sick, diseased, and ignorant. We have existed in a society that has made distorted energy exchange very accessible, very easy, very enticing, and very alluring. It's like handing someone a sharp knife with a smile and telling them why it's such a great idea that they hurt themselves and others. Is that a little too graphic for your taste? We can take it a little less dramatic approach. How about if we just take a short glimpse of what a male and female profile for a dating site may look like if honest personal energy description was the eligibility requirement to date or just hook up? Male energetic profile. I carry the energy of deep insecurity and anger from childhood and adult trauma that hasn't been healed, of having to repress my emotions in order to portray myself as a man because I have been conditioned to believe that's what a real man does. I also have the energy of lust, greed, and rage from the internal need for true intimacy that I just can't seem to allow myself to experience. So I spend a lot of time watching pornography in an attempt to fill that void, but it seems the more I watch, the more empty and unfulfilled I feel. This is after I jerk myself off, hidden and sometimes shameful. But of course, I should be able to find someone that I can easily screw and can satisfy me and my every need and my every want with no strings attached. Or maybe strings attached. It all depends. I wonder why I haven't been able to find that person yet. I must not be good enough. Anyway, I hope we can hook up soon. Wink, wink. Can't wait to meet you. Are you shocked? Hold on, there's more. Female energetic profile. I carry the energy of fear and shame from childhood and adult trauma that hasn't been healed, of having to shut down my voice in order to be acceptable and appropriately a female. I do this because I've been conditioned to not make any waves or cause any disruption to the imprisoned expectations placed upon me by patriarchal society. I also have the energy of resentment, lack of self-esteem, and unworthiness from years of not speaking my truth, my wants, my desires, and true soul expression. I tend to fill that void inside with men that are unavailable, dishonest, and take advantage of me because I haven't discovered my own self-worth and self-love. Basically, I'm an unconscious, self-sabotaging machine. But I've got nice boobs and a nice big ass, and I can spread my legs nicely. So I hope I get a lot of male attention here. By the way, I'm just a tiny bit psychotic and neurotic from suppressing my issues, but you'll be too busy hitting it to even notice. And by the time you do, hopefully we'll be living our happily ever after. Wink, wink. So, now that I've probably offended most people who just read the last 3 pages, let me clarify on this. Those scenarios are not the case with every person. There are many who have been awake, who are now waking up, or who are beginning to become curious about things beyond what they can physically see, hear, or feel. But the point is that those male and female profiles are still very true for many people who carry the distorted energy of unhealed wounds inside of them and around them. If we are being completely honest with ourselves, we will admit that we all have carried unhealed wounds within us at one time or at many times throughout our life and have dealt with the consequences of them and have shared those consequences with others, consciously or unconsciously. Most do this because they don't know any better, as discussed prior. Or if they do know, perhaps they just don't care to grow or evolve out of it. But mostly it's due to ignorance, just purely unaware of how energy works and manifests and attracts. They are unconsciously living their lives. That saying, oblivion is bliss, clearly does not apply here. But fortunately, although we as a society have been unconscious participants for the most part to this travesty, we are being driven by a force much greater than guilt, shame, and ignorance to begin to explore, accept, transform, and integrate the shadow aspects of ourselves, even if only in sporadic spiritual circles. Until now, that is. In this great awakening that the human species is undergoing, we are being guided by our higher consciousness to face the shadows within, to face the false sense of self we have been identifying with. We are being led out of the darkness of the imposed sickness, disease, and ignorance, and into the light of awareness, acceptance, and empowerment. That concludes part 2 of the book Unnecessary Chaos. In the next video, I will conclude chapter 2 in the video called part 3. So I'm sending you all lots of love, lots of light, and lots of activation energy.